Oh man, you guys are gonna have to really forgive me for butchering your names here. Mustafa and Yasser from YouTube channel Tech Quotes. Relatively small channel, but big, okay? So 390,000 subscribers. They're based in the Middle East, have published a video revealing attempts by PC hardware companies to pressure them into altering product coverage. And I would love to say that I'm surprised, but the reality of it is that the PC industry, particularly globally, does not operate with the same set of norms that especially we in the Western media might take relatively for granted. And I shouldn't even say take for granted. I mean, did you see that that amazing piece that John Oliver did on like sponsored healthcare products in news? Like what was basically keeping news, like small time news media alive in the US is like these like quack cures and products and these segments that are essentially disguised as news, but actually full on ads. And it was wild to me because for whatever reason, YouTube influencers are apparently more regulated than news media, which was mind-blowing to me. But anyway, I'll tell you, from my experience in the industry, none of what I'm about to tell you actually surprises me that much. I want to make it clear that it doesn't mean that every single person who works for these companies is bad. A lot of what you're going to be observing is a very different cultural understanding of the role of media. And this is something that we have absolutely seen from Western branches of companies and in Western media. I'd say one of the most notable examples was that situation with Hardware Unboxed, where NVIDIA pulled something very similar, essentially saying, we are going to pull your ability to do launch day reviews if you don't adjust your tone regarding real-time ray tracing. If you don't get a little more positive on this feature, we feel we've worked very hard on. Essentially, holding Hardware Unboxed's ability to bring people news coverage of these cards in a timely manner and affecting their revenue unless they were willing to be more positive. Now, obviously, Hardware Unboxed told them to take a long walk off a short pier, and so they should. But it absolutely shows that there's an attitude, particularly outside of Western circles, towards media coverage, that it is essentially marketing. That essentially these media companies owe their existence to the hardware manufacturers that they cover and should simply play by the rules, or they can destroy them as easily as they created them. So let's talk a little bit about what Mustafa talked about.
That will immediately kill any form of objective review and completely ruin the entire reason why literally any of us are here at all. So
yeah.
It's a big problem.
And the reason that any of you watch, if all you were watching was an ad and it's not disclosed because it's not sponsored, if all you're watching is whatever the manufacturer wants you to think, well, why don't you just watch their videos? Why don't you just have a direct line to their PR department? Okay, why don't they just beam their messaging straight into your brain? Right? That's the whole point of independent evaluation, is that we can have differences of opinion. Hardware Unboxed is allowed to think, feel, believe that real-time ray tracing is not a huge deal today. They're allowed to think that. And I'm allowed to disagree. I'm allowed to think it's super cool. That's the whole point, right? So let's talk about this. Mustafa showed screenshots of direct messages with Zotac/NVIDIA reps pressuring him to take down a critical video because bad coverage, and not, bad coverage will lead to company layoffs. Well, who had the bad coverage of Twitter this week is what I want to know. Sorry, too soon. Then, meanwhile, ASUS was upset because TechQuotes' video about a motherboard launched a few hours after the 3 p.m. embargo and after a different video about a Gigabyte motherboard. Now, this is something we've definitely seen before. Companies believing that when they provide a review sample, you are somehow obligated to hit an embargo time and date. Let me inform you, in case it was not abundantly clear before, your embargo is your embargo. It is a time before which we agree to not publish the information. We are not under any obligation, no matter what motherboard or graphics card or monitor you've sent, we are not under any obligation to actually publish at that time. And if we feel there's a better time for our channel or for our staff to complete the work or for our audience to see it, maybe there was something we feel was more important for them to see first, then that is absolutely a decision that we will make at our sole discretion, and you will deal with it. If you are upset, we can send you back the product if we, ultimately decided not to cover it or whatever else. But we don't work for you. I'm not an ASUS employee, not an NVIDIA employee. You're not my boss. The deal is, if the product is cool, we'll cover it. And if it's really cool, we're going to cover it super positively, and that's going to be great for your sales. And the risk you take is that if we don't like it and we don't cover it positively, either through not reviewing it at all or negatively covering it, you take that criticism, you improve it, next time you bring us something better, and we love it, and you sell a bunch of them. That's the deal. That's how it works. And if we don't maintain our independence, then nobody will believe us anyway, and you're going to have no media, and you're not going to get that positivity when you release something great. Like, that's the thing. They love, we especially saw this with the Hardware Unboxed thing. NVIDIA literally still had quotes on their website from Hardware Unboxed, helping them boost the messaging for good products. But then they're not willing to take the other side of that coin. And it's the same thing with these guys here. Gigabyte, meanwhile, this is great, asked them to remove the name of a competing motherboard from a motherboard review. How are you supposed to review a product without mentioning a competing product?
And that's something that you expect from an advertisement, or potentially a heavily sponsored video where there would be disclosures about the fact that this is a sponsored video.
Of
so
course.
The audience should expect these types of things.
Of course.
Not a review.
No, these were not sponsored videos. That needs to be clear because there's a lot of sponsored content out there. We do sponsored content. And in a sponsored video, you have to understand, I'm never going to lie to you. Okay? I'm never going to tell you guys something that I don't believe. If I say it looks cool, if it's in a sponsored video, that means I think it looks cool. However, every sponsored video does go under the microscope from the brand. And every brand has their own policies. Okay, so some brands, oh man, I've got a great story for you guys, actually. Was it a sponsor? I think it was a sponsored video, actually. Okay, this is a really good story. I won't say who it was, but some brands can be very liberal, okay? Like Intel Extreme Tech Upgrade, for example. As long as we had some tie into Intel Tech, they were chill. They just wanted to be the presenting sponsor of Intel Extreme Tech Upgrade, and that's part of what made that content so great. But we've run into just utterly ridiculous situations with brands, okay? I'm not going to name a specific name, but I will say that this particular brand is what's known as a chaebol, I believe is the pronunciation. Essentially a gigantic organization in South Korea, okay? This particular brand makes TVs, okay? So that narrows it down a fair bit, but I'm not gonna say which one. But we did a sponsored video for this particular brand at some point, and they literally, okay, I shit you not, they literally were upset about the color of some lights in our background because they felt that that color of light might elicit associations with the other one of these brands. And we were like, okay, A, That color looks nothing like them. Okay, so we're not even talking mentioning that brand. Okay, this is the kind of petty stuff I'm talking about. We don't even name them. We literally just have a color of light in the background of the video. Like, are you even for real right now?
I never heard about this. This is amazing.
Yeah. I actually hadn't heard about it either until I went on a trip recently with Colton. He was telling me about what. This is why I'm so glad that I have a business team that acts as like you know the meme with the like sleeping at night and then there's like the soldier absorbing all the knives. Like that is what our business team does for me, because that is the kind of thing that when we are trying to get a video over the finish line, okay, we're trying to get it out to the people to enjoy, we hope, and that is a conversation I'm having. I literally like get a splitting headache. Like it's not an expression. That level of stupidity actually makes my brain hurt. I just can't. And so they act as my shield so I can sleep peacefully at night, not having to freaking worry about some stupid color of light in the video. Unreal. All right. So I am apparently specifically mentioned at 9 minutes and 1 second. I wouldn't have known the timestamp, but okay. As an example of a large YouTuber who can choose to not commit to publishing a video right when the NDA lifts. Quote, can the largest corporation on the face of the earth argue with him about it? Definitely not. But I would like to point out to Mustafa and Yasser that is actually not the case. NVIDIA has not basically, okay, I shouldn't say not spoken with me, but NVIDIA has not said more than one word more than they absolutely have to me since the hardware unboxed debacle. It is very clear that I am in their bad books, and we absolutely can butt heads with brands large and small. Recently, we had that. I'd say that's not parallel, so I'm not going to talk about that. But what I will say is that it is true that we will probably still get seeded with review samples. So even right in the aftermath of that, we did still get review samples, even if it was extremely coldly. My understanding is that LTT Labs actually has a bit of a better working relationship with NVIDIA. But again, this is still more evidence, as if I needed any more, that the cold treatment was absolutely personal and not anything to do with the content. So yes, people do argue with me, and we do sometimes get I guess yelled at, but I guess you're right. There was a situation, AMD launched, I believe it was a GPU that we just didn't publish. We didn't publish at embargo. I think we ended up like it not being a review. It was basically just us talking about how this is ridiculous. And then NVIDIA had I think a Titan card that they just like dropped, like they just launched, didn't communicate anything about. And we basically said, yeah, we're just never going to review this then. Forget it. We're not gonna like play this stupid game where you guys just go, boom, there's a GPU, go. And then it's everyone competing to see who can pull the biggest all-nighter in order to get coverage of this up. Like that's ridiculous. It's unprofessional and it's disrespectful. So we basically just said, no, we're not going to do it. Mustafa claims that Gigabyte and or NVIDIA were upset about a video on the 2060 Super that he did in collaboration with them. They asked him to take down the video and modify it. After he didn't, he claims NVIDIA shut him out during any new launch. The complaints that Mustafa received were, and this is mind-blowing, AMD was mentioned, a favorable Call of Duty benchmark graph came after other graphs, and an Amazon link was in the video description, which all three of which are totally common practice in a review. At the end of
Well, the one thing that I'm not 100% certain about here, and maybe it is a review, but it says a video that he did in collaboration with them. Does collaboration count as just a review sample, or like was there something more?
You know what? Not
The way that
100%
it's
sure.
worded in our doc, it sounds like it might have been like a some type of thing that's beyond a review. And at
Well,
that point, like, I don't know.
unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to provide any additional light on that. Hopefully, someone who knows more about the situation can pipe in the comments on the VOD or something like that. But
Sure, yeah.
at the end of 2019, NVIDIA apparently asked Mustafa to make a marketing video with a script pre-written by them and label it as a review. Mustafa claims that if he didn't go along with
Ugh.
NVIDIA's requests, he would get blacklisted, and that the same mail he received was forwarded to all content creators out there. AMD apparently completely refuses to send them anything, so they have to buy stuff. I mean, that's fair enough. You don't have to engage with every single media outlet in the world. Where things go wrong is when you try to coerce the ones that you are engaged with or even are not engaged with. Try to manipulate the rules of engagement so that you can ensure that all media who cover you are favorable. Apple's at least smart about it. Their rules are all unwritten. So they will just cut you off if you step out of line, and they will only invite people who have a long, perfect history of covering Apple the way that Apple likes to be covered. So, I mean, at least you have to give them credit for being better at being insidious bastards, I guess.
One issue too is like, yes, they don't have to engage with every reviewer. I mean, we didn't send the screwdriver to every single person that has ever shown a tool on camera on YouTube. But it is a little brutal when you are trying to do this as your mainline thing. Like this isn't a small creator; it's 390,000 subscribers, right?
Yep.
Not being able to get these things early is going to be a performance nerf for his ability to grow his channel.
Absolutely.
So by doing stuff like this, by pulling these things from these creators, you are directly attacking their livelihoods.
And directly attacking the ability of your customers in these regions to get information about your products, which is pretty stupid. The last thing is Mustafa says that they tried to make a 4090 review using an ROG Strix gaming GPU, but the card wasn't posting on all platforms. He had to experiment for 12 days to come up with a solution, and after he finally got it working, Asus had him send the card back without finishing the review. Sometimes that is how things work, especially with bigger items. I mean, we have to send things back all the time. But it's frustrating that he wasn't able to finish the review. Like, if the issue was with the card, I'm sure Asus could, like, make another 4090 if they need one for something, rather than take this one back. However, sometimes there is a limited number of review samples in the budget, and the card has to go to the next reviewer. We've seen that many times as well. So our discussion question here is, why does this keep happening? Is the only way for these companies to be kept honest by large YouTubers calling them out? And what if TechQuotes, sorry, that's the name of their channel, what if TechQuotes hadn't had the stones to speak up publicly? I wouldn't have even known. Like, that's the thing is, I've been told before, like, hey, Linus, you have this perception of how great this company is to work with, but it's only you, dude. Maybe they're just, like, afraid to tick you off because you're going to go on WAN Show and do a 20-minute tirade on how awful they are and how stupid they are, which is a very real possibility.
It can be pretty effective sometimes.
But like, if they hadn't been willing to speak up, how are we going to know about it? What's the solution, Luke?
Yeah, no, true. I don't think there is one. I think we have to keep doing what we do, which is rage loudly every single time it happens. Because hopefully that will reduce the amount of times that it can happen. But we're in a situation where you have these absolutely gigantic, untouchable companies that can just beat around these relatively small creators. And I'm not trying to bash on anyone by saying relatively small, but those are the easiest targets for them to go after. Those are the easiest people for them to try to control, because any impact on those people's livelihoods is going to be a more brutal hit, basically. They have a higher chance of being able to control these people. And it's really good when people like TechQuotes don't take that.
Don't back down.
They don't take it on the chin. They fight back. They reach out. It's good. It's scary. And I definitely applaud the bravery, and hopefully we can help by broadcasting it here. But
Man, you know
yeah,
what
I
is,
don't know.
you know what's kind of a maybe dumb concept that I had for the lab was like like if there's niches that we don't cover, maybe having like I don't know how we would make this work, but maybe there's like a special line of merch or something like that, that you know some of the proceeds go to this like slush fund that's like a way for the community to nominate like certain reviewers for certain categories, maybe especially ones we don't really cover, where we can essentially sponsor like small reviewers who are doing really exceptional work or something like that. Like, I don't know. How
Highly
do you,
specialized people.
yeah, how do you take the distribution of review hardware out of the hands of the most conflicted entity in the entire transaction?
Well, that's where you always have the problem, though, is the embargo, right? Because
Yeah.
like uh, YouTube viewers will get mad about things like clickbait titles and thumbnails, but they work, and they because they work, it's extremely important for people to do at least a certain amount of it. You can debate where that line is, but you're going to have to do some amount of it. You have to make your video very enticing to click on. Another really important thing on YouTube when it comes to embargoed hardware is releasing your video on time. If you're late, you're going to get way less views. So to a certain degree, unless we find some way to start handing out embargoed hardware to reviewers, which is like not going to happen, there's a limit on how much we can help in that way. Because just being able to buy things, while very noble, is not actually enough if you want your YouTube channel to be able to perform better, you know?